Alberta's $3.5 million inquiry into anti-oil campaigns came up short. No clear link was found between foreign money and the cancellation of resource projects in the province. And there was no evidence of any wrongdoing committed by environmental groups. The commissioner of the report, Steve Allan, found, quote, "No individual or organization, in my view, has done anything illegal. Indeed, they have exercised their rights of free speech." Sonya is Alberta's Energy Minister. Hey, Minister, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
So critics will note that this final report is, basically a summary of disclosures that were already public. How do you justify spending $3.5 million on that?
Well, I guess what we found with the report was that these campaigns to target our oil and gas sector were actually a lot bigger and a lot more formidable than we ever imagined. When we set out with this, we had suspicions and theories and observations that there were these campaigns targeting our oil and gas sector. But what the report found was that they were a lot more sophisticated, larger, more coordinated than anybody imagined. So that's, and I think we should be concerned about that because it's a lot of foreign money coming across the border targeting domestic Canadian policies.
Isn't it quite the opposite, though? Does the report not say that it was complicated, if not impossible, to find direct links on that? That the threat was, in fact, significantly overstated to what the reality was?
Well, I think what it found is there's some profoundly large numbers of U.S. funding, primarily from large multi-billion-dollar foundations crossing the border across Canada. What it found is it was very hard to trace, and that's what led to its the report's key recommendation that we need greater transparency, greater disclosure, greater accountability. Because tracing the funds, it's like throwing a penny into a muddy pond, and you can't find it. The deeper it goes, the further down it goes, the harder it is to find. And that's what he found in tracing those funds. He can trace it across the border, but the deeper he goes, the harder it's to find. But he found profoundly large amounts of money crossing the border to impact domestic legislation, laws, policies, regulations, regulatory processes, and that should concern all of us, because it's not disclosed.
But he couldn't find sort of cause and effect. Is that not the case? I mean, that was the sort of point of this examination. And at the end of the day, Steve Allan could not say, here came this money, and that's where it was spent, and that was the effect that it had in Alberta.
Actually, he found it in very significant detail in a 650-page report that documented a very sophisticated campaign, traced the money to multiple organizations, traced their tactics, what they did, what role they had in pipeline project after pipeline project. And we saw the results. We had canceled projects to the tune of $100 to $129 billion of canceled projects. And when they were canceled, these environmental organizations took credit for it.
But he found little evidence to directly connect the work of these groups to those canceled projects. Is that not correct?
Well, they celebrated when they were canceled, and
but that's not causing the cancellation. That's not causing the cancellation. Of course, they would celebrate. They opposed them, right?
So their goal, which was their goal and their strategy, was to delay projects, to raise the costs, to raise the expense, to create uncertainties, to change the policies, to litigate when something got through, and they were very successful. I think you just have to look to a number of our large pipeline projects that met their end, and the campaigns and the tactics that were deployed against those projects for years. There's a clear link. Obviously, there's when projects get killed or died or canceled, there's a range of factors, but this was clear and direct impact on those projects. And don't ever forget that a lot of Albertans lost their jobs. They were hurt, families were hurt, businesses went down, people lost their life savings. This hurt Alberta, and it hurt the people of Alberta. And the report itself showed that these kind of campaigns were bigger than anybody imagined and more coordinated and sophisticated. And I think that's the key finding. And the key recommendation with all of that is we should understand these campaigns, but more importantly, there should be better accountability and better financial disclosure about foreign funding that comes across our border for any purpose and what it's used for.
I don't think anybody denies the pain in families where jobs are lost. I know people in the oil patch. I've lived in Alberta. I know the degree to which people rely on that for jobs. But isn't the case here that you were simply, I don't know, outmaneuvered in a sense on the PR front to give the messaging, as you would have it, that brought this on, which I think Steve Allan would say there isn't a direct link anyway, but that the messaging was stronger than what your messaging was able to come back at, if you know what I mean.
Well, I think so. And I think he shone a light on how sophisticated the campaign was and how brilliantly executed it was for over a decade. Basically, they outmaneuvered, they outspent, they outmaneuvered.
But isn't that on Alberta, though? I mean, where was Alberta to counter that, A? And B, as Steve Allan would note, that's free speech, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point, because where were governments during the tar sands campaign started in 2008, and it very quietly and in a very sophisticated way did damage to our economy. And where were the governments in it? Where were the governments involved for a decade? This unfolded. This has been underway since 2008. But I think one of the most important learnings out of it is to make sure it doesn't continue and it doesn't harm our energy resources of the future. Things we need to do in the province to diversify, to bring in lower carbon energy, things like carbon capture, utilization and storage, hydrogen, geothermal, critical and rare earth minerals, all the things we need to do to move to lower emitting sources of energy. And we're already seeing evidence that these types of campaigns are targeting hydrogen, carbon capture. We have to prevent that from happening because we need these types of technologies and energy to move forward.
Is the larger hard truth simply that the planet is moving on? That yes, fossil fuels are necessary in the moment, but the fact is the planet is moving on, and that is what is behind the changes up north of Fort Mac.
And that's a lot of the reasons why we're so focused in this province on hydrogen and carbon capture, on geothermal. But right now, around the world, we're having a global energy crisis where supply has not met demand coming out of COVID. And Alberta could have been in a position to help. We could have been in a position to supply oil and gas to those markets that are needing it, but we can't because we've been blocked. Instead, we're seeing production ramp up in other jurisdictions like Russia and Saudi Arabia to take advantage of that. So not a single barrel of oil has been left in the ground because of this campaign. GHG emissions globally have not gone down. All as we've done is transferred production to other places in the world. And that's another lesson to learn, is what has this really accomplished? It's been more than a decade of a campaign that's hurt Alberta, kept our product in the ground, kept us from reaching global markets, but other countries have done that, and we've just transferred wealth to those countries.
Just finally, quickly, this was a big deal for Premier Kenney at the outset. He wasn't a part of this rolling out this week. I just wonder why.
Well, we've got a lot of initiatives underway in the government right now, a lot of initiatives. And this is
He put a lot of stock in this, and he wasn't seen anywhere yesterday.
Well, this is also an area that I've been working on for more than 15 years. I've been invested in energy advocacy and getting to markets and pipelines, near and dear to my heart. And I think given the abundance of things going on in our government, I was there to release the report, proudly release the report. I'm really pleased with the 650 pages of findings in the report. I think everybody should read it. And I don't think anybody should read anything into the Premier not being at the announcement.
All right, Minister, well, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.